Well, thank you, Chris, and you've made it through probably the most difficult part. I'm not sure what the other questions will be like, so
Yeah.
it may get tougher. But I wanted to ask you, what positive changes do you see that we could make practically?
Practically. Well, right now we can just explain to boys of this time that it's all right to speak of emotions. They're like, one of the most common things you'll see today or won't see is it's rare to see men talking about their fears or struggles or insecurities. It's very rare. You see it, I've seen it a lot at this school, and it's beautiful. That's what's great about Trinity Christian School, is really this openness. But in many other situations, it's very rare. Men don't speak of their emotions. So by encouraging men to be open about being afraid and that there are others who are just like them, it's going to open a whole new gate. So I think we should first off encourage boys just to speak of how they feel, really, and stop putting on a mask. Yes.
Chris, do you think that the women's movement has blurred the lines of what it means to be a man today?
Women's movement blurred the lines. Women's movement. In what sense do you think? Like, what do you mean?
Well, I mean, we have the women's movement and the Me Too movement and all those things, and so men don't really know like where some of those lines are. I'm not saying about hyper masculinity, but I'm saying like, you know, if I'm too much of a man, then I'm too much, or if I'm not, you know, I mean, it kind of goes back and forth. Like, should you open the door? Should you not open the door for a woman? Those type of things.
Well, like I said in one part of my speech, talking about how healthy masculinity is good, I think, like I said, the perfect place is the middle ground. And as much as there's lots of, there are the Me Too movements and all these feminist movements, and there is good qualities to it, and there's also points when we go too far with it. Just like how we go too far with masculinity. And I think as long as we realize that we need to stay somewhere in the middle of it, we'll be on a right track. The moment that we try too hard to be for one side or the other is when we slowly start to drift off. And if we just keep the mindset that we need to be both masculine and feminine into the balance and everything, keep that, we'll be in a good state. So with the women's movement, I feel like there are effects. But I think it's good that if men were to start questioning these things, it'd be very healthy. It'd be a step forward, because in a lot of cases they're not questioning any of it. So if it was to start creating questioning, it'll bring more men to start researching this topic more and thinking more about it. And in that, men will find more of their identity and fears, and it'll be healthy. So I think the question that the women movements are causing is good.
Chris, first of all, you are important and loved.
Thank you.
Okay, so picture this. 5 to 8-year-old boy outside. He's got his stick in the shape of a gun, and he's slaying the dragon and cowboys and Indians and cops and robbers and all of that. Is that something that is contributing to hypermasculinity, or the opposite? In other words, is it an appropriate and healthy behavior for a young boy to be creative and adventurous and heroic in his own mind?
Yes, yes. Like I said, boys will be boys, but they have little ambition to be mature men. So like, it's fine that these boys do these things that they're doing. It's totally fine, but there's a point where you gotta create a line where there is something wrong. And you need to point out where, like the knight that courageously saves the girl and therefore deserved her as his own, where that is wrong in the sense where you don't deserve anything. And we need to point out the wrong elements of these stereotypes. The cowboy is fine, the honorable cowboy who does all these things for no money, but when we speak about how he goes around and he doesn't speak to anyone about how he feels because he is this Lone Ranger who doesn't need to speak about anything and just say his own few lines and that's it. When we have this cowboy, we can show that. We can tell little boys, hey, when Mr. Clint Eastwood is alone and realizes that he's inadequate and he has nothing he can do to improve his character, he'll be completely alone and depressed and broken. And you know why? Because he never spoke. So speak up. So I feel that we can just show the proper movements and guide our children. That's what we're supposed to be doing, guiding them in the right directions. And when they lead towards something that's wrong, you just push them back, push them back. You don't got to cut these things out of their life completely. Yeah.
How much of your research in this bravado of masculinity related to children who grew up without accepting authority or having authorities? You made a few references to family and fathers.
Yes.
Just maybe interact with that a little bit. Did you see some of that in your research?
Yeah. The place that I believe that this is needed most is like with like the black communities and a lot of boys who don't have fathers, who don't have role models in their lives.
Right.
And they don't understand, they don't have somebody who they see. So like I said, they look to these men who they see have all this amazing glory and have all these great things that they search for, and they're like, wow, that's great, that's what I want to be. These boys never had a real role model, a lot of them didn't. And so a lot of them grow up feeling the need to prove themselves through these forms. So I feel like for those sections of men who don't have these authority figures, they need it the most. Like, I was doing a lot of research on just the amount of movements and groups, and a lot of the movement groups are in white communities. And I can tell, if anything, this is needed in places where there are boys who don't have fathers and they don't have real role models.
Right.
That's where this is needed most. So in those groups, then children need healthy role models where they can see the good, the bad. They can have that person to push them away from that violent night to the honorable night. Yeah. So with the minority groups and everything, we need more of this talk in those groups. Yes. Come on.
Question from the audience.
Yep.
Can you speak about the differences between masculinity and femininity from a biblical point of view?
So we see Jesus and we see Mary, and we see two beautiful characters who are both caring and nurturing, and they share that in femininity. And we show Jesus who is protecting all of us. They portray Jesus as a shepherd in the sense that he's not a knight. They don't put him as somebody who's only going for violence and protection with a sword. They see him as a nurturing father and everything. That's the masculinity, the protective masculinity. And we see Mary, who brought Jesus into the world. Masculinity and femininity have their differences. And I think those differences are where we should rejoice in them the most. And those differences are what make us man and woman. Mary was nurturing and caring and loving, and she was able to bring children into the world just as all women can, and Jesus protected, and he nurtured and raised and honored. And they both can do that. Jesus can't give birth, but they both, he's gotten it, I can't say that. But
Just keep going.
yeah,
I gotta make a note of this.
they both have their own individual qualities of masculinity and femininity. And you can see, for feminine, I would look to Mary as the main role model, and for Jesus, the main role model for masculine. So I think those are the two differences between masculinity and femininity, but we should realize that they work together in harmony. And that's what makes them great together.
Oh, Chris, you pointed out that boys and girls are physiologically different.
Yes.
Do you think that they are biologically different as well? And how does that play into the need that men have versus the need that women have to talk about their feelings?
Yeah, God. With my anatomy teacher here too. I think it's important for both. And we've created an environment where we believe that men need it less than women, but it's not true. It's still not true. You got bodybuilders who are storing up on testosterone and everything because they want to be bigger and better so they can prove to themselves. But deep down inside, there's something that they're going, again, not for all bodybuilders, but all men need to speak of their emotions as much as girls do. And there is no physical thing that makes us different. We both need to talk about it. And I think there's a lot more maturity that comes from women in the sense that they can talk about their feelings more and they feel more open about it. And that maturity and growth comes from the fact that they are able to speak of how they feel, how they're scared, and they're open about it, versus boys who are just like, well, I don't think she's gonna like me. Not gonna say that to anyone. This is gonna be a fear that I'm gonna think about a lot forever. And they don't do anything about it, and that just creates a hole. And like I said, the pit of despair goes deeper and deeper when we don't talk about how we feel. So no, it's no difference physically. We both need to talk about it equally, just as much. And the fact that we don't talk about it, it shows in the masculine character and the feminine character.
A question that's coming up in a few different forms is how does this fit in with kind of the gender confusion that's going on right now? How does biblical masculinity, true masculinity, fit with that? Is this movement of sexual fluidity pushing hypermasculinity to the forefront?
Pushing hypermasculinity to the forefront. Well, I feel that a lot of it is confusion, and it's also very sad that our society defines ourselves so much and what we do with our genitals. I find that really pitiful, but I feel that showing emotions does not change one's sexuality. That being open and vulnerable, like I'm encouraging men to be, doesn't in any way push these gender fluidity things. And I have not done research for 9 months on this topic at all. But as best as I can answer it, I feel that it's not pushing hypermasculinity. Hypermasculinity is something that's not new. It's always been around. And this is something new. This confusion that we feel in the gender fluidity is new. So, no, I do not feel that the hypermasculinity is any way or form pushing this gender fluidity movement at all. Yes.
Chris, you have said a couple different times that women, it sounds like the problem primarily lies with men. Like that's kind of your take. My question is, what role, if any, do women have in? I mean, I like James Bond.
Oh yeah.
I mean,
he's amazing.
Are
beautiful.
Women and Dirty Harry? Are women pushing men in some way, either subconsciously or obviously, or you know, in reality or whatever, pushing them to this Superman-y type guy?
Yes. I only date real men. He wasn't man enough. They're pushing it because that's what they see as well. This is what they've been raised on as well, so this is what we are all in together. And a great portion of women are also just pushing that as well, where they see all these things and they see this greater. So yes, there are sections where we all push each other to move in this direction. In a way, just... I feel that especially with this younger generation, where like the player is the bad boy has always been glorified, and they've always been like, how girls chase after that amazing thing, and there's a weird push where we have our standards in society. Like if a man sleeps with a ton of women, he's a stud, but if a girl does, she's a slut. So it's just. We're confused and we're all pushing each other in different directions, and we don't see that. Sometimes people say things to make others feel incompetent. So I feel like, yes, there are some of us who are pushing others into this direction. I hope I answered that question well enough. Yeah.
Okay, so do you think that this hypermasculinity is coming from lack of leadership or absentee fathers more than society or the media or?
Yes, fathers play a massive role. And like I was saying, like with the absence of fathers, you have boys who go in a completely different direction. And I feel like I was saying, where the 1950s, where men were coming back from war, and they had witnessed so many traumatic things, and they were pretending to be fine and not speaking of it. This generation of the 50s, where we had all these men who were like feeling the need to just completely just put this traumatic experience and just throw it out. No one needs to know about it. I'm completely fine. It got to the point where everything was going out the door with emotions and fears. Oh, what's the question?
Is it society or the home that's causing this?
It's both. It's both. Where you go home and you have your father who shows you who acts the way he does, and then it comes to school. I feel especially like fathers can have influences on other boys. Different fathers can have influences on other boys when they have influences on their son. I remember in third grade so vividly. We were all sitting around this tree, and it was just me and these 3 boys. And one boy is like, when I grow up, I'm gonna have a lot of sex. And we're all just like, I don't know what that is, but all right. And that boy was probably surrounded with his father, and his father was talking about these things, and he was probably just as confused about his masculinity and all of these things. And so that father had influenced me and several other boys in a way that he would never realize. So fathers influence us, but it's a chain network. It all works together, and it's corrosively working together right now. So yes.
To piggyback on that, question from the audience, how should I as a father raise my son to actively express healthy masculinity? Is it based off my own influential actions, or is it based on the morals I instill in him at a young age?
The morals and the actions. It's a little bit of both. The actions that your father does in front of you, the things you see, and also overall just the morals you instill. That's very important. The morals are a very important thing, obviously, but with some kids it's very difficult to get things across. My father, of all people, knows that. It's just, it's very difficult to explain things to kids as young ages, and like I said, where boys at young ages look for these loving relationships with their brothers. And I feel also with actions, a father is also very important. So it comes down to both, where you constantly have to remind your son of all these healthy things, but you also need to act and walk the talk that you're speaking. Just saying, hey Shane, I love you. When a son sees his father speak emotionally and just is open about these things, he has a role model. And honestly, the actions, because we speak with our actions far more than our words, these actions are what's going to push your son in the right direction and your daughter in the right direction to see what good masculinity is. When they see someone who's real and is open about their emotion and is aware of their fears, and they tell their children about it. I remember seeing my dad cry for the first time, and it was something where he was human all of a sudden. He wasn't this real thing that just told me and yelled at me once in a while. It was something real. And I feel like with fathers, crying, as much as it's looked down upon in our society, crying is something that will open up your son's eyes. My father does it too. And you're not alone. I'm glad I'm making him feel embarrassed right now. This is some revenge. Yep.
I think probably. I think I'm going to go ahead and say that time is up.
Oh.
All right. And Chris, you did a wonderful job.